Hello and welcome to my review of the Matrix Awakens. This is essentially a free playable tech demo experience for the Unreal Engine 5. I played this on a PS5, but you can also play it on both Xbox Series consoles. So what do you need to know about this? Well, firstly, it's not actually a game. As I said a moment ago, it's just an interactive tech demo that shows off what the new Unreal Engine can do on modern consoles. It's got three main parts to it, the first of which is an introduction to the demo by Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss, who play Neo and Trinity in the Matrix movies. They talk about the history of the films and how technology has progressed over the years. Something interesting that a lot of people who watched this section didn't realize is that the actors are replaced with the Unreal Engine 5 character models of themselves at random places during this presentation. There is an obvious part where they de-age Keanu Reeves, but I'm talking about the other section where he has his long hair. I personally didn't notice exactly where the swaps occurred on my first watch, and upon further views I still can't really tell for sure. There were a few moments where I thought I saw it, but again I can't really say for sure. After this introduction, you move on to the second part of the demo, which is an on-rail shooting section that you can actually play, although it is heavily scripted. It starts with a cutscene between a de-aged Neo and Trinity driving through the city. They have a bit of fourth wall breaking banter, which is interrupted by a third character who you play as in the next section. Neo just kind of buggers off and leaves you there to handle things on your own, and at this point you realize that you're being chased by some agents, and it goes without saying that you should probably do something about it. So you grab a weapon and start shooting at the car's tires. The only control you have here is the left stick for choosing which tires to shoot and the right trigger to fire your weapon. As I mentioned earlier, this is a very on-rails and very scripted scene, so as far as I know you can't actually get away from the agents. I'm pretty sure that no matter how well you shoot, an agent will always catch up to the car and trigger the next scene. The next part is more of the same, except this time you're shooting at the cars and trucks in front of you until finally you're chased by a chopper which you shoot down with a large machine gun. After you've downed the chopper, you have one final shot to make by simply moving the right stick to the correct location and firing your pistol to end the chase scene in a rather large explosion. And now we move on to the final section of the demo, which lets you explore the open world and mess around with a few of the engine's tools. There really isn't that much you can do, but there are some information spots marked on the in-game map that give you a bit more insight into the technology itself. You can walk around and explore, but you can't jump, attack, do missions, or really much of anything else because again, it's just a proof of concept that gives you an idea of what the Unreal Engine 5 could do in the future. There is, however, a lot of different cars in the demo, and you can drive any of them that you find parked at the side of the road. You can't steal any of the cars already being driven by an NPC, and if you crash too much, the engine in that car will die, making the car useless, so you'll have to find another one. Being me, I managed to glitch out the very first car I drove because, of course I did. I thought, let's try this ramp out, see if I can do a jump. I mean, why not? I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine. And it wasn't. You can also bring up a menu and have a little look at some of the engine's tools that will give you an idea of how the tech works. Of course, for most people this would just be a sort of novelty kind of thing, but it's there if you want it. You can move the location of the sun, which is actually the only source of light in this open world, and it allows you to see how different areas interact with it and produce shadows. There's a few filters you can apply that show you the AI-controlled traffic and the pedestrians. And you can also get a better view of the area by flying up into the air, not in the same way that Neo can, but still, you can fly up and it gives you a sort of drone's view of the entire playable area and really shows off the scale and detail of the world. You can even peek into the windows of many buildings and see different types of rooms and stores. And these are made with a kind of fake 3D image that's actually quite convincing. You can play around with traffic density and NPC density as well, remove both entirely if you want to, and more. The pedestrians that you see literally everywhere are all procedurally generated by the MetaHuman software. In fact, that's how the de-aged Neo and Trinity were made, albeit with some extra scans of the actors' faces. I tried to mess with the citizens of the city a little bit just to see if there was any kind of interactivity, but sadly no. They just kind of phase through the cars and walk around you. I also tried to fly across the water to the other islands that you can see in the distance to sort of, test the boundaries of the demo, but unfortunately you can't actually make it over there due to an invisible wall. If you happen to crash as many cars as I did, you'll also see the new chaos physics engine at work. Cars take damage and deform based on actual impact that they take from collisions. In most games up till now, the damage a car or an object takes is actually pre-made and breaks in the same way every time. The game is simply playing back a pre-made damage animation when certain conditions are met. With the chaos physics engine though, the cars will suffer unique damage, which is all calculated in real time depending on what you do and the damage it takes. And so that is basically it for what it's about and what you can do in the demo. So let's talk about the pros and cons of this demo and the tech behind it. So I do know a decent amount of stuff regarding technology, both software and hardware. I mean, I've built, computers relatively recently with very little issues, but having said that, I'm not an expert by any means. So I'm going to try and look at this demo through the eyes of a regular consumer if possible. Personally, I found this demo to be far more interesting than impressive. Don't get me wrong though, it does look very nice indeed, and some of the systems at play here could mean huge things for games in the somewhat near future. The thing that really got me the most was the beginning section where they swapped out the actors for the digital models at random intervals. I genuinely couldn't tell at first, granted I wasn't really looking for it, but still, it's quite impressive and perhaps even a little bit creepy. I mean, just kind of think about it, if this technology progresses much further, say 100 years in the future even, certain actors or relatives of people that have long since passed could kind of live virtually forever. There's also that audio voice tech thing, I forget what it's called at the moment, but it can kind of analyze voice samples from movies and interviews, and it uses AI to sort of make them say whatever you want them to. It even adjusts the cadence of the speech to the point where it sounds like the real person. If that and this visual fidelity progresses much further, it would be both incredible and terrifying at the same time, in my opinion. Not to get too philosophical, but imagine if it was filtered down to the public and people had a sort of digital recreation of someone who'd passed away. Imagine perhaps a small desktop screen, like a digital picture frame, that displayed a metahuman created using pictures and voice samples and the AI I just mentioned. That really doesn't seem too far out of the realms of possibility right now, and I just don't know if it's the right thing from an ethical or moral standpoint. I feel like it might become a sort of unhealthy attachment, but one thing you can't deny is that the tech behind all this is absolutely superb and actually quite profound. I did, however, find the chase sequence to be quite fun, although it is on rails, as I've already said. Developers can often implement a lot of intense and dramatic playable set pieces when the game takes place on rails like this. They can basically curate the experience and achieve standards that wouldn't normally be possible in emergent gameplay. However, that's not to take anything away from how this felt and looked when playing through it. It really does look great, and there's a lot going on at all times. I'm not entirely 100% sure how scripted the shooting is, because you can target multiple cars during the same moment. For example, if you have 3 cars to shoot at, what if you pick a different one each time? Does it change how things happen in any way, in regards to the cars flipping over and crashing into other non-chasing cars? Is it possible to shoot one chase car and have it crash into the other 2, taking them out of action? I have played through it a few different times, making sure to shoot at different cars, but it is kind of difficult to tell. I think it's designed in such a way that makes you think there's multiple possibilities when actually there's some scripted trickery going on under the hood and behind the scenes. Even if that is the case, I don't really think it matters. This is, after all, just a glimpse of what could be possible in this engine, and it's not even going to be released until May 2022. Lastly, I think the lighting, shadows, density, and sheer scale of the city are all very exciting. It all helps the locations to feel more alive, lived in, and immersive. I've pretty much always been a gameplay over graphics kind of guy, but in some cases, high quality visuals really can help a game to stand out. And so I think that about does it for the good stuff. Let's move on to some more negative things. I will acknowledge that it's kind of reductive to be hard on this demo, as it is just that, a demo. It's not an actual game, it's a concept, and not to mention an advertisement to developers and investors. However, some negative opinions did come to mind, so let's discuss. The only real thing I could talk about, I think, is the performance. I played this on a PlayStation 5, and from what I understand and the research I did, the resolution is dynamic and sits between 1440p and 1620p, and that's on both the PlayStation 5 and the Series X. On the Series S, however, it sits at 720p due to the console's limitations. So far, none of this is bad at all. Resolution doesn't really matter to me as long as it's, I'd say, 1080p or higher. I don't think that's, unreasonable in 2021, but it's the frame rate that really suffers the most. This demo runs at 30 FPS and frequently drops below that. The chase scene held up pretty well for me, except for one instance where it dropped significantly. I also experienced some heavy frame rate drops when flying through the city streets quickly and when crashing into other cars. It probably goes without saying that there's a lot of advanced and powerful systems at work in this demo, so some issues are to be expected, even on current generation consoles. The PlayStation 5 and the Series X are pretty powerful machines, but the stuff they're attempting to run here is absolutely cutting edge and resource heavy. I just don't know if the visual niceties that you get in this demo are worth the low performance bar. Of course, this is not a fully optimized piece of software, and yes, it is unfair to treat it like a finished product and say that it doesn't perform that well. I am 100% aware that over time, these things do get better. So yeah, I'm not being ignorant or anything like that. I know how it works and I do understand it. I know this demo was created to show off the monumental stride in fidelity that could be possible relatively soon. However, I think the point I'm trying to make is that I would rather turn off ray tracing, lower the traffic density, and lower some other settings in order to get something like, I don't know, 1440p at 60 FPS maybe. Again, I want to be clear, I know that optimization in the future will make things better over time. Developers and engineers will work their magic, and I'm sure the PS5 and the Series X will be producing games at this level that run at least 1080p 60 FPS at some point. And as I said, I guess that's really the only negative aspect of this demo for me. Well, the worries about performance and the possibilities of metahumans in the future, but let's move on to the conclusion. In my opinion, anyone who has the means to download and try this experience really should give it a go. It's about 25 gigabytes in size and it won't take up much of your time to get through. It's an interesting look at what we could be looking at in the near future. Sure, the performance isn't quite up to the current standards yet, but ultimately, even though I know how these things progress, I do have some worry in the back of my mind that makes me feel like developers will keep chasing better and better visuals to the detriment of fun gameplay and worthwhile adventures. Hopefully that won't happen. There's plenty of games out there right now that both look amazing and contain fun, rewarding gameplay. Regardless of if you prefer graphics over gameplay or gameplay over graphics, one thing is certain, technology is moving forward and I'm really excited to see where it leads. So there you go, that's my review of the Matrix Awakens. You can try it out right now for free on PlayStation 5 and both Xbox Series consoles. If you enjoy the video, I really hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel, and if you like what I do and want to offer your support, check out the first link in the video description down below. But with all that said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.